Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Right now, get a free select tool when you buy the Craftsman V20 2-pack battery kit. Whether it's the backyard, the bathroom, or beyond, Craftsman has the tools to help you power through and get the project done right. Because DIYing is unpredictable, but your tools shouldn't be. Shop Craftsman at Lowe's today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
This is Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to Prop Points. I'm Jeff Erickson. He's Nick Whalen. We are with RotoWire.com. Check us out, RotoWire.com. Everything we have to offer there for your fantasy and betting needs. We're going to be talking a lot about the NBA. The Thunder took a 2-0 lead, of course, last night. We'll talk that. We'll play it or pass it. Pacers versus Knicks style Game 2 props. We're going to talk hockey. Paul Bruno is going to join us. Talk a little Oilers Stars. Recap what the Panthers did to the Hurricane again yesterday. And then finally, we'll talk a lot of baseball in the final segment. Also, happy Ronald Acuna Day to those who celebrate. Makes his season debut tonight there. So we'll talk about that as well. Nick, though, we got a lead story. Obviously has to be OKC. SGA getting that MVP award in front of his home fans. Drops 38. Thunder take a 2-0 series lead.
Giving the whole Thunder team Rolexes in the locker room after receiving the MVP as well. Yeah, this has been a banner week for SGA and the Thunder, and another dominant win last night. OKC now minus 295 to win the NBA Finals. They're, of course, heavy favorites to win this series, up 2-0, minus 1,400. And something that I also noticed when I was doing my morning scanning of the sportsbook, Jeff, you can bet OKC right now at plus 210 to win the title next season already. So we're already moving ahead to forecasting the Thunder as heavy favorites to win it in 2026. But, one of the big questions that I had coming into last night, of course, was the officiating, right? The league is aware, SGA is aware, everybody's aware of the narrative coming out of Game 1. And look, SGA got to the line 15 times last night. I didn't think a single one of those was remotely controversial, right? And it just kind of speaks to this narrative that, yes, even if SGA is somewhat of a foul baiter at times, he's still just almost impossible to defend. The way he's slithering around pick and rolls, the way he's able to get into the lane, contort his body, use those subtle fakes. This was a masterclass, I thought, from start to finish by SGA. And of course, Jalen Williams stepped up with maybe his best overall game so far of the postseason, 26 points on 12 of 20 from the field, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, chipped in defensively as well. And Minnesota, technically they cut down on the turnovers compared to Game 1. They only had 14. Still, though, anytime you're in double digits against OKC, which feels like it's going to be every game against that defense, you're going to lose that battle. They were minus 12 in terms of points off turnovers. And, we talked about Minnesota with these shooting struggles, Jeff, and, they went, 12 of 50, something like that in Game 1. And you're thinking, all right, that has to turn around. It did not. They shot under 30% from three. Again, the 5th time already in this postseason that they've had what I would label a disaster shooting game.
Yeah, absolutely. Anthony Edwards, 1 of 9 from beyond the arc. Naz Reid, 0 for 5 from 3-point range. Julius Randle, 0 for 3, sat out the 4th quarter, basically. If you're not getting it from Randle, you're not getting it from Reid, you're asking for trouble. Edwards, to his credit, did take more shots, as promised. 26 shots. He did get that overscoring, 24.5, seemed pretty well comfortable the whole time, 18 points by halftime. But they're not, if they're not making threes, they're in big trouble. And I think that's like a narrative in the NBA today too. Of course, they're not quite the Celtics in terms of their reliance on the three, but they need to be able to hit something. We saw this even in the Golden State series where they just go super ice cold from beyond the arc.
Right. I mean, they're a team that really only has 2 true attackers, and one of those attackers was just a total non-factor last night, and that was Julius Randle, who got off to a slow start. He was slow in the middle, and then barely even played at the end of the game. And Chris Finch basically said without saying, look, he didn't have it, and we had to go in another direction. And unfortunately, they pivoted to Naz Reid. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I guess, gave them a decent game off the bench, 17 points in 25 minutes, but that was about it. Everybody was all over Dante DiVincenzo props last night. He took 12, 13 threes in Game 1. That volume was cut in half. He played only 22 minutes. He took only 6 threes. I mean, DiVincenzo has been a huge issue for the Timberwolves throughout these playoffs, and especially in the first 2 games of this series. I mean, he was a minus 27 last night in those 22 minutes. He has a minus 45.2 net rating in 52 minutes in this series. They have an 81.7 offensive rating with Dante DiVincenzo on the floor. That is extremely bad. And a 126.9 defensive rating when DiVincenzo is out there. To be fair, these have been 2 blowouts, so it's not like most Timberwolves players have sterling plus minuses right now. Mike Conley is actually the only T-Wolves player with a positive net rating, but I mean, you could see it on Chris Finch's face last night after the game, Jeff. I think he is kind of twisted into a pretzel right now, trying to figure out this OKC team as the series heads back to Minnesota. And, it sounds obvious, but you can't have a game like this out of Julius Randle. Part of the reason that the Timberwolves are in the Western Conference right now is because Julius Randle has played at a legitimate all-NBA level for the last month. And this was old Julius Randle coming back to roost last night.
Yeah, and Finch is kind of quick to bury a player in game. Sometimes it works.
Yeah.
There's that regular season game where he benched the starters in the fourth quarter against OKC, and they had that massive comeback where Ant-Man was off the floor until the overtime. But there, sometimes I feel like he's got too quick of a trigger as far as that goes. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Noteworthy to me, Nick. OKC, big depth advantage, but they didn't use it last night. Caruso played 24 minutes. Wiggins played 10. Yeah. Nobody else on the bench played more than 3 minutes.
No, they did go very starter heavy.
I missed that one. Yeah.
I mean, Kason Wallace usually he saw his usual complement of minutes. They've actually used him a little bit more than Caruso over these last few games. And someone like Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, like they usually get some like test minutes, in the second quarter. And it's like, all right, if you don't immediately take advantage of that, then we might be going away from you. And that was the case for Joe. But we saw more of Isaiah Hartenstein. We saw more of Chet Holmgren, who only played 26 minutes in game 1. He was up to 32 last night. And part of it is the Thunder were in foul trouble, right? I mean, Lou Dort had 5 fouls in game 1. So we did see a little bit more of that bench. He was able to play a clean game, saw 35 minutes last night. And I will say this, Jeff, I mean, the Thunder did empty the bench at the end of the game. In general, if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves and Adam Flagler, Brandon Carlson, Alex Dukas, if these guys are in the game, that is not a good sign for you.
Yep. Series, Thunder now a whopping minus 1,400 to win the series. They were pretty heavy favorites to begin with there, but after these first 2 games, neither which with close outcomes. I mean, it's really starting to spread out even more. You look at total games, props, all of that there. Everything's so heavily in favor of the Oklahoma City Thunder, as well it should be.
Yeah, no question. And, I think it now begs the question with OKC firmly in control of this series. Like, is it win the finals or bust for OKC? And my answer to my own question would be kind of. They should have plenty more opportunities in the future with this young core, but we've also gone through this with so many teams in the past, including the Oklahoma City Thunder in 2012 with Kevin Durant and James Harden and Russell Westbrook, who lost to the Miami Heat in the finals. And you're thinking, all right, this is devastating, but they'll be back. How could they not? Never once made it back. So I don't think you ever want to assume this. And look, OKC has so many avenues. Like, even if they somehow flame out, if they blow this series or they lose in the NBA finals, like, okay, maybe you trade for Giannis this summer. You have that as an option. You have all these future picks. There are moves they can make to keep this roster together and even add to it. I will say this though, Jeff, I don't know if there's going to be a time throughout however long this finals or this Thunder run lasts where the bracket will set up like this, where you're getting a really advantageous matchup against Minnesota in the West Finals, where you got the 3 and the 4 seed waiting for you on the other side in the East. I mean, it feels like this is going to be their best opportunity to win an NBA Finals. And right now, it's hard not to see Oklahoma City capitalizing on that.
Amen to that. I totally agree with you on that. And sitting in your chair for a second, I'm going to make an egregious cross-sport comparison.
Here we go.
I'm reminded of the Dan Marino Miami Dolphins, second year in the NFL, goes to the Super Bowl. They lose there. Oh, it's okay. They'll be back. Never made it back to the Super Bowl, not even once.
I thought for sure you were going to bring up the Bengals there, Jeff.
No, I try sometimes to tie it into my personal rooting interest, but in this particular instance, I'm going to avoid that there. We're going to talk a little bit about Ronald Acuna, talk a little baseball, what happened last night. But first, are you still using your buddy's gut instinct as your betting strategy? Come on, you deserve better. RotoWire has the real tools the pros use: rankings, projections, updates, and data that doesn't sleep. Whether you're making picks, setting your fantasy lineup, or placing bets, our award-winning insights give you the edge you need. Get started today by heading over to RotoWire.com and entering Roto15 at checkout for 15% off any RotoWire product. All right, Ronald Acuna Jr. set to return today. The Braves got through with him out but they're not thriving. They lost last night, got walked off in the 10th inning by the Nationals. They were losing most of the game, rallied to actually tie the game in the 9th, but they're now 24-25. They're 7.5 games back in the NL East behind the Phillies. They're adding Acuna back though. Finally, your reaction to him and to the Braves right now?
Well, I'm still skeptical of this team in the long term. Like you said, they're still 7.5 back, but they've at least dug themselves out of that initial hole where it looked like this team was maybe on pace to be one of the most, surprising just flops in recent MLB history. And they're at least in the mix, but the NL is so strong at the top that, it's going to be an uphill climb in their own division. It's going to be an uphill climb in the wild card. And, I think it's easy to say, oh, Ronald Acuna, former MVP, we're bringing him back. Which version are we getting of Ronald Acuna, Jeff? Because I think we do forget that when this injury occurred, which was right around this time last year, he played 49 games. Ronald Acuna was hitting 250. He had an OBP of 351. He was not putting up Ronald Acuna numbers by any means. So I personally will be at least tempering my expectations for these next few weeks. I want to see what he looks like before I fully buy in.
Yeah, me too. Playoff odds are interesting. At one game under 500, the not making the playoffs is at the lowest payout I've seen so far. Plus 105 to not make the playoffs for the Braves. Minus 125 to make the playoffs. All along I've been kind of like skeptical of them being able to recover from such a hole that they dug themselves. This is, you would think you'd be getting a better odds with Acuna coming back right now. So a little surprised at that.
Yeah, well, I think the San Diego Padres are helping them out right now if you're looking at the Braves as a wild card team, right? Because you got the Mets and the Giants at the top of the wild card. Padres have now lost 6 in a row. So, catching them perhaps for that final spot in the National League feels a little bit more attainable than it did a week and a half ago.
Absolutely. We'll have more on that game later on in the show. Got our props for the day there. One game going on right now in Major League Baseball. The makeup of last night's rainout in Boston. Red Sox and Orioles 0-0 in the second inning. Heston Kjerstad just robbed the Red Sox of a homer. We're going to be talking Pacers, Knicks coming up next here on Prop Points.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You're watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back to Prop Points. Jeff Erickson and Nick Whalen here. Nick, A, I'm a Pacers fan. B, I'm a golf nut. I know you are one of those two things. My dilemma is I'm teeing off about 1:15 Pacific time. Game starts at 5 o'clock Pacific time. Play it or pass it. Record the game and try to go into radio silence, or do you try to follow on the course with your phone?
I guess I will play the phone option, Jeff. This is something that I do all the time. I am very familiar with. I actually enjoy it. I find it pretty easy to follow the game. Obviously you got to step away when you need to hit a shot. I think the big question here, Jeff, might be the difference between a Friday afternoon tee time in the LA area where you are and the Milwaukee area where I am. Because if I was teeing off on most Fridays, I think I might be able to get that round in before the game even starts. I know it's a lot different out on the West Coast. So maybe the bigger question here is like play it or pass it, over under 4.5 hours on this round.
Last Friday was 5:40 for what it's worth.
Oh, goodness.
Public course in LA, that'll be. Yeah, exactly. So that's a definite pass it. In fact, I find, the Pacers weren't playing that night. So I was playing a different course that plays slower, but also there's drive time, which you don't want to deal with in LA versus Milwaukee also. So lots of other issues here. All right, let's get to the substantive part of play it or pass it here. My guy, Tyrese Halliburton, over 20.5 points, minus 120, play it or pass it.
This is a good one from producer Michael, because I really have not played or passed, for that matter, much with Tyrese Halliburton throughout these playoffs. I think he can be He could be tough to predict game to game. Obviously went for 31 in the overtime win the other night, at 31 in the closeout game against Cleveland. But the 3 previous games to that, all against the Cavs, he had 11, 4, and 19 points. Like, Tyrese Haliburton at heart wants to be a distributor, right? He is somewhat of a reluctant scorer. He can do it, but it's not necessarily what he sets out to do in any given game. Now, 20.5, very attainable, but he has only hit this in 5 of 11 playoff games so far. Had 14 points in the first half alone in game 1 on 11 shots. That's usually not how he comes out. He's typically not that aggressive early in games. He was made up a lot of his bones on the scoring side in the second half when the Pacers have had to either keep pace or trim into these leads. So really, to me, Jeff, it comes down to how you expect this game to play out. Pace-wise, defensively, like, are we seeing, the New York Knicks put up 69 points in the first half again, and the Pacers feeling like they have to keep up with that? I say probably not. I think this will be a slower pace game. I think both teams probably cool off a little bit shooting-wise. I think there'll be a little bit more defensive intensity. So I will pass this one. I think, again, we get a lower scoring effort. I think there will be a lot of emphasis on slowing down Tyrese Haliburton tonight after that big game 1.
I don't disagree with you, actually, believe it or not. Aaron Nesmith, play it or pass it, over 2.5 made threes, plus 130. Obviously made 6 in a row in the fourth quarter in game 1, 8 overall. I think we should do play it or pass it. Carl Anthony Towns trying to guard Aaron Nesmith also while we're at it. But let's stick on the prop first.
It. Yeah, it feels like we're being baited here a little bit, right? They're like, we all just watched this guy hit 6 threes in a row, and now we're giving you 2.5, and we're giving it to you at plus money. Look, I think I'm still going to play this, Jeff. I'm going to walk right into this trap because, what Aaron Nesmith did in game 1, obviously that was an anomaly. The level of shooting over a 3-minute and 15-second period, like, we may never see that again in NBA history. Like, literally that had not happened before game 1 the other night. But Aaron Nesmith has gone over this number 6 times in 11 playoff games. Like, he is a very good 3-point shooter, especially in catch and shoot situations. Probably doesn't take as many as he should, to be honest, because he is a little bit marginalized with all the other options in that Pacers offense. But I think to the casual fan, you're like, who the hell is this guy? Just coming out of nowhere, hitting these shots. Like, Aaron Nesmith has been a very, very good 3-point shooter throughout his career, throughout the season, going all the way back to college at Vanderbilt. And he was 2 of 2 from beyond the arc before that crazy flurry in the fourth quarter. So obviously, if you're the Knicks, you're going to be extra aware of where Aaron Nesmith is. That's got to be part of the game plan in a way that clearly it was not on Wednesday night. But at the same time, I don't know if you can afford to dramatically shift your defense to focus on a guy who's essentially the 5th option, maybe the 4th option at best for the Indiana Pacers. So I think those looks are going to be there. And look, Aaron Nesmith is coming into this game with as much confidence as anybody has ever had in NBA history. So if you're giving me this at plus money, I will take it. We'll play the over 2.5 threes on Nesmith.
Yeah, I think your point about them not being able to dramatically shift their defense is really key here too, because that's one of the things about the Pacers. 5 guys on the floor, all are offensive threats in their own way. They can't really just defend against that there, and that's one of the things I think that does work in favor of that prop. All right, let's shift over to the Knicks side here. Play it or pass it. Jalen Brunson over 37.5 points and assists, minus 110. Easily clear that mark in game 1.
Yeah, easily cleared it on points alone, of course, with 43 points, 5 assists. He's hit this number in just over half of his playoff games, 7 of 13 so far throughout this run. To me, it comes down to, what do you expect from Jalen Brunson, the scorer? Because I think the assists could be a little bit fickle. I dug in on the numbers from game 1. He only had 6 potential assists, which is a really low number for somebody who handles the ball at the level that Jalen Brunson does. I mean, he's averaging 7.5 assists for the playoffs, and to only have 6 potential assists, and for the Knicks to convert 5 of those 6, I mean, that's well above expectation. Usually you assume, half get converted at best, and throughout the playoffs, for a lot of guys, it's been lower than that. So if you think everything runs through Jalen Brunson again, if you think we get a high scoring game and Jalen Brunson puts up 35 points tonight, then yeah, obviously this makes sense to go over. But I think I lean under here, Jeff. Maybe the Pacers are okay with just allowing Brunson to get his and kind of, by default, taking some of these other guys out of the offense. But ideally, the Knicks are not leaning that heavily on Jalen Brunson. They're getting more contributions from Anunoby and Hart and Bridges, and obviously Karl Anthony Towns had a great game 1. So I think this is one of those things where Jalen Brunson could have a really nice night. The Knicks could win this game. He could go for 29 and 6, and he could still go under. So I'm going to pass this one.
All right, fair enough. I think the fact that the Pacers are just throwing bodies at Brunson is more right there, and they're just trying not to use up all their fouls. I think that's the thing that we have to watch there a little bit there too. All right, smarter bets start here and last all year with VSiN Pro. Right now, sign up on an annual subscription and get 14 months for just $1.99 when you use promo code PRO. That's 2 extra months free for less than 50 cents a day. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber today and get instant access to a daily email with all the best bets from hosts and their guests, real-time betting splits from DraftKings and Circa, 24/7 video access on the VSiN Watch app, plus full access to VSiN.com's analytics, betting trends, and expert breakdowns. Don't wait. Go to VSiN.com/subscribe and use promo code PRO to lock in this offer. That's VSIN.com/subscribe. We're playing play it or pass it right now, Knicks Pacers style. Let's move on to the next one. Pascal Siakam, under 25.5 points and rebounds at -120. He wasn't on the floor late in this game. It was interesting that the Pacers went with Obi Toppin. They went with Ben Shepherd in overtime. Siakam was kind of, and that's the thing about the Pacers is they'll do that from time to time.
They will. And I think ultimately this benefits the Pacers. I think it's Rick Carlisle, not necessarily leaning on reputation and more so leaning on what's actually working in the moment. And it served him really well throughout this postseason. So we're looking at 25.5 on the points plus rebounds. This might be the first under in the history of play it or pass it, Jeff. So I'm going to play an under here. I'll just say that right away. I'm fading Pascal Siakam tonight. He's a really interesting case. He's still got his numbers for the most part in game one. He was right around where he's been throughout these playoffs, but I thought really had to work for it. OG Anunoby is such a difficult matchup for him, and he's going to see plenty more of him tonight. I do think there should be more rebounding opportunities. I don't think the Knicks necessarily shoot it at the level that they did in game one. So if you're looking at, potential rebounds, there's probably more of those out there. But I think we could also see more Miles Turner on the floor for the Pacers tonight. And again, scoring wise, I just think Siakam's upside is fairly capped in this series. He's also averaging under this number in the playoffs, right? So this is maybe his most difficult matchup of the entire playoffs. He's already averaging under this number. To me, I have no choice but to go under 25.5 points plus rebounds.
All right, very well. One last one, and this is the side. We don't usually get to the side and play it or pass it. The Pacers to cover the 6-point spread. It's moved up. Game one was 4.5. It opened at 5.5 for game two. It's up to 6 now.
Yeah, it was at 5.5 last night. Woke up this morning. We're up to 6. And look, I've said all along, this is a toss-up series. I was on the Pacers in game one. I'm on the Pacers to win the series. And this comes down to, how do you think the Knicks bounce back? I think they're a mentally tough team, but this is a huge emotional burden to have to put behind you and try to overcome after the way, the final 8 minutes of game one played out. And look, the Knicks to me are unlikely to stretch out a second half lead like they did in game one. I'd be very surprised if the Pacers find themselves down double digits in the fourth quarter. I mean, New York was shooting 53% from the field through the first 3 quarters. They had a better offensive rating for the game than they did in that crazy blowout in game 6 against Boston when it felt like everything was falling for the Knicks. So I think we get a close game in the fourth quarter. The Knicks could very well win it, but I'll fade the popular play here. I will take Indiana with the points. The betting splits over at VSiN.com, Jeff, are telling me that 71% of the handle is on the Knicks to cover that 6.
And hence the rise in the line, I guess. I guess that's where you go with that there. I have an opinion on the total. I'll express that later on in the show. But next, Paul Bruno joins us on the Progressive Guest Line and to talk some hockey. Coming up next on Prop Points.
You're watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
I'm going to turn down the temperature a little bit, get this show on ice here with Paul Bruno joining us on the Progressive Guest Line, talking some hockey with us. Paul, welcome. Carolina got smoked by Florida. Florida is doing it again to another team, 5-0 last night. Do the Panthers have a special sauce that lets them get through those final steps in the playoffs more so than other teams?
Boy, Jeff, it's almost too soon for me to be talking about the Florida Panthers after what they did to the Leafs.
Oh, no.
But we're seeing more of the same. They've really found their groove, and we've seen it in the last 4 games they've played. they've really demolished their opposition, and it's quality opposition when you consider the two teams they're beating so badly in this round and last one. They had more points than the Panthers did in the regular season. So the champs do have that secret recipe, and they're playing it to a T right now.
Paul, if you had to make a bet right now on any team to win the Stanley Cup, obviously we now know that the Panthers have a 2-0 lead, so maybe that makes it a bit easier. But does it have to be Florida for you? When you look ahead to what their potential matchup would be in that Stanley Cup final?
I do think they're in the driver's seat right now, Nick, and I don't see anybody unseating them because, as I say, they're not just playing hockey; they're intimidating, and they're doing it in such a way that and they're getting away with it too. The game is played between the whistles, but they're getting away with a lot of extra pushes and shoves and punches and kicks and sticks after the whistle, and they're not being called. So as long as that continues, it's going to be like the WWE, where the bad guy gets away with stuff that you can't stand seeing, and they're doing it on a regular basis, and it's a big part of their success because they wear down their opponents physically and mentally. And that's the game that they're playing. They're very good at it, and they're being allowed to do it.
The funny thing is Carolina typically is a team that you would think is good at that sort of stuff too. They do a lot of the little things. They dominated the Caps much like the Panthers dominated them in game 2. But yet we've seen Carolina kind of struggle when they get to this step. They can get through the first 2 rounds. They've lost conference finals, both 22-23 and in 2018-19, had a number of other good playoff runs, but it's been a while since they made the Cup finals. What's lacking on this team?
Well, let me also say it also highlights the discrepancy in terms of the depth of the divisions in the Eastern Conference. The Atlantic Division is far superior than the one that the Carolina club has dominated. When they switch over and have to play the likes of Florida and Tampa in the last few years, they've been exposed. They don't have the requisite physicality to match up with the Panthers right now. They're more a speed-based team. They try to get so many shot attempts at the goal, and it's funny that they've been really squelched. I mean, last game, they didn't hit double digits to near the end of the second period, and that's unheard of for a Carolina club that regularly leads the league in the last few years in terms of generating shot quality and shot attempts at the opposition. But Florida is checking them into the ice. They're using a forecheck system, guys, that I've seen before. I saw it a couple of years ago in the playoffs, and the last year and this year. They forecheck as deep in the opponent's end as I've ever seen any team in recent history, and it really wears down defensemen. Their goal is to out-hit the opposition by far and to get after the defenseman at every turn. They don't take them many shifts off. It's like playing against a waterfall, and you get the consistent effort and the consistent attempts at the body contact, and it may not pay dividends in game 1 and 2 of the series, but it sure does by the end of it in game 6 and 7, where the defensemen that they oppose have been a shadow of their earlier selves.
One last follow-up on Carolina before we move to Dallas and Edmonton. How badly do they miss Mikko Rantanen? That whole saga about trading for him and then having to trade him to Dallas there when they didn't think they could get a contract done. I mean, how much did that hurt this team? Oh,
big time. The guy is a power forward, elite power forward, top scorer. Look, but he's had a couple of four-point games in the playoffs. That's not easy to do. And he did it back-to-back to underscore his value to his new team. This guy's loving life in his new digs, and he's got the big contract signed and sealed, but he is bent on sending a loud message to all his former suitors to say, you really missed out here. I am what they say I am. One of the top players in hockey. He's a 50-goal shooter in the past, 100-point player in the past. He'll get there again in this environment, and he's a big reason why his current team is odds-on to advance to the finals in this series.
Talk with one of our hockey experts over at RotoWire.com, Paul Bruno, joining us on the Progressive Guest Line. Paul, let's get to tonight's game, Game 2, between the Oilers and the Stars. Dallas leading that series 1-0. 5 goals. 5 in the third period in game 1. We're looking at a very close matchup as far as the money line is concerned. Dallas at home -112, Edmonton -108. Well, we'll start with the side before we get into some of your props tonight, Paul. Are you looking at a money line play? Would you dare take either side on the puck line?
I think I like the puck line in Dallas's favor big time, Nick. The Stars are a deeper team than Edmonton, and I know what I'm going to get in goal when I look at their goaltender, Ottinger. I'm not sure what you get with Stuart Skinner. It seems like it's the penthouse or the outhouse with him and nothing in between. And the fact of the matter is that the depth of the Oilers, it doesn't match up with the Dallas Stars. The Stars have the 4 lines up front. They have 2 excellent pairs on defense and a baggage smasher on the third pairing in Ilya Lyubushkin. So I like the makeup of their team much more than I like the Oilers setup. They're predicated, as everybody knows, on the 2-headed monster up front with McDavid and Draisaitl. They're filling in with guys who played a lot of time during the regular season as 3rd and 4th liners. They're plugging them into 1st and 2nd line roles. I'm talking about Vasily Podkolzin. I'm talking about Kasperi Kapanen, Connor Brown. These guys were 3rd and 4th line players. They're being elevated now in the playoffs. And maybe the experiences that they have as a group, it's been helping them. But I don't think they can sustain the level of play that they'll need to against the Dallas club, as I said, that will consistently roll out 4 lines and just wear them out.
We're going to talk about some of Paul's picks and individual player props in a second. But first, hey, VSiN fans, how would you like to play the Circa Survivor or Circa Million contest for free this season? Winner's Circle Proxy is giving away one free $1,000 entry to each contest, plus full proxy service. And get this, you'll be paired with the VSiN host for strategy all season long. Enter now for your chance to win. Just visit winnerscircleproxy.com/VSiN. That's winnerscircleproxy.com/VSiN. We got Paul Bruno with us on the Progressive Guest Line. We're talking NHL. Paul, who are your anytime goal scorers that you like for tonight?
Well, you can be chalky and go for Draisaitl and Rantanen. They're both at 115 and 145 respectively. I'm looking for the big payoff, so I'm looking a little further down the list. And you can't sleep on a guy like Jason Robertson, who has been their leading goal scorer much of the season in Dallas and a primary figure on their power play. So I like him tonight at plus 265. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for the Oilers. He'll be playing top line minutes with Connor McDavid and also getting power play time. So he's a good look at plus 275. And then I also like Tyler Seguin. He'll play specialty minutes on the power play for the Stars as well, with a plus 310 attached to his name. And he'll get offensive zone starts too to augment that possibility as well. So I like the 2 Stars and the 1 Oiler, and that reflects the lean that I have on tonight's game.
All right, Paul, good stuff helping us break down game 2 tonight. We got about 2 minutes here, and we need to address your Toronto Maple Leafs. First of all, what is the status of the tattoo? Is there a way that you can amend this? Can we just roll this over to next season? I mean, where do we go from here on the tattoo?
Well, Nick, I think you'll recall I didn't put a year on it, right? So that space is still available, and I think there's still the window is not closed on this team. I think they have a ton of money to spend in the offseason, and they already made a critical move that I think will be a help rejig and redirect this team going forward. They've cut ties with Brendan Shanahan as the team president. There's too many layers and too many officers in this organization. And I think streamlining that aspect will trickle down to the rest of the club, and it'll make it a more orderly situation in terms of managing this team. It just got in the way of so much that they tried to do in the past. I've come to know that they had a lot of squabbles at that level with player transactions that some of the Leafs did and others that they didn't. I think they've got to let Brad Treliving and Coach Berube do what they do best. They're pros in their lanes, and the top guy in terms of the executive suite, Keith Pelly, is a guy that I know as well, and he has had senior positions in large sports corporations before, and his penchant is to allow the people that he employs to do what they do and not get in their way. And I'm counting on that to be a big factor going forward. Of course, we have the big sidebar about what happens to Mitch Marner. And guys, I don't understand one aspect. He may leave soon, but do we have to see a trade? I think if he leaves as a free agent, they get the cap space that he leaves behind. They can easily get 2 quality players for $14 million and don't have to worry about getting the trade done with one team. So there's lots of opportunities.
The music's playing. It's like an award show. We're going to pull out the hook, unfortunately, right now. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll do this again soon. Thanks for coming on board. Baseball talk coming up next on Prop Points.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You're watching Prop Points on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into Prop Points here on the Sports Betting Network. Nick Whalen, Jeff Erickson taking you up to the top of the hour. Make it rain with Keith Irizarry stepping in for Adam Shine. That's coming up next at the top of the hour, 3 p.m. Eastern here on VSiN. Follow the Money with Mitch Moss and Paulie Howard. You can catch that at 4 p.m. And as always, VSiN Primetime coming your way at 7 p.m. Eastern. All right, Jeff, we got to talk some Major League Baseball. We got a full slate coming our way tonight. We have one game in action right now. It is a makeup game. Orioles-Red Sox was rained out last night, so they'll play a doubleheader. We're in the top of the fourth right now. O's leading that game 2-0. Cade Povich on the mound for Baltimore. Brian Bayo out there for the Red Sox. 7 strikeouts so far for Brian Bayo through 3 2/3. All right, Jeff, we ran out of time earlier in the show. We wanted to talk about the red-hot Philadelphia Phillies, who've won 7 in a row. They continue to be a great road team. And they got that 7th win in a row last night over the Colorado Rockies, who now turn around and host the New York Yankees this weekend. It's Clark Schmidt going up against Tanner Gordon. We'll get to that in a moment. But I think we need to spend some time, Jeff, just contextualizing how bad this Colorado Rockies team has been. We are now at the 50-game mark through the season. They are 8-42. They are on a 26-win pace. They have the worst record at the 50-game mark in the expansion era. So we're going all the way back to 1961. The 2023 Athletics, by the way, were 10-40. That was the next worst record in that era. And, I was doing some digging. I was running some queries on StatHead earlier today, Jeff. Somehow, the Colorado Rockies only have the 20th worst team ERA through 50 games, again, in the expansion era, which led me to look at the 1996 Detroit Tigers, a team that you probably remember a little bit more than I do, Jeff. They had a 7.13 ERA through 50 games and still had 4 more wins in that span than the 2025 Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, and I think this illustrates it's not just the pitching. It's the hitting, too. It's just hideous for this Rockies team. There's a reason why we call them the pasting Colorado Rockies. They do so many dumb things. They're you can go so many different metrics to point out how bad this team is. They play in Coors Field. They have a 286 WOBA. They have the 43 home runs on the season. Think about that. Only the Kansas City Royals have fewer home runs this year. And the Rockies play in Coors Field. They play at altitude. It's this historically bad roster build. Every which way you look at it there. They don't make up for their lack of power speed. They have 26 stolen bases on the year. Every single way. They're hitting 219 as a team. Again, playing in Coors Field. So it's not just the pitching. It's the hitting. It's the fundamentals. It's everything. Firing Bud Black did them nothing, just like the other two teams that, the Pirates and the Orioles in terms of firing their manager. There was no dead cat bounce from either of those firings either. So just everything going wrong with this franchise.
Yeah, shocking to me that firing the manager didn't solve all of their issues. And I don't know if it's getting any better the rest of the way, Jeff. They still have the 3rd toughest remaining schedule in Major League Baseball. They got to play the Dodgers 10 more times this season. They got 9 games against San Francisco, 9 against the 2 New York teams, 6 games against the Chicago Cubs. So tough sledding still to come for this Rockies team. And of course, playing in the best division in baseball, certainly not helping their cause. But my goodness, man. Anyway, the Colorado Rockies are at home tonight against the Yankees. Yankees, as you would guess, are huge favorites on the money line, minus 290. Total's 11.5. What do you look at in this game, Jeff? I have a feeling that you might be looking at an anytime home run prop, which we've been red hot on lately.
Yeah, the streak of 2, I think it is, but just to try to, just for transparency's sake. But going to Cody Bellinger, he's got a 15-game hitting streak. He's had 5 homers in that streak. After a really slow start to the season, he feels like he's dialed in right now. What better place to continue that at Coors Field against Tanner Gordon, who's in there replacing rookie Chase Dollinger, who went on the IL. Gordon is a 27-year-old rookie with a 6.23 ERA and 178 WHIP in AAA. So I think the Rockets red glare tonight. I think Cody Bellinger is one of those people that takes him deep.
All right, we told you earlier in the show, Ronald Acuna set to make his return tonight for the Atlanta Braves. They host the San Diego Padres. Braves minus 180 on that money line. 7.5 is our total. Good pitching matchup here. Nick Pivetta going up against Chris Sale. And look, if you're going to catch the Padres, I think now's the time that you want to do it, because Padres lost again last night to the Toronto Blue Jays, lost that one in extras. They've now dropped 6 in a row, Jeff. They were swept by Seattle, just now swept by the Toronto Blue Jays. What is going on with this Padres team?
They're not hitting. Over the last 30 days, they're 24th in WOBA at 296. In that home series against Seattle, they scored 3 total runs. They got shut out the next 2 days in Toronto. Finally, yesterday scored 5 runs, but it still wasn't enough. And it took them 11 innings to do that as well. Meanwhile, facing Chris Sale, who's on fire right now, over his last 6 starts, 2.02 ERA, 48 to 11K to walk. And the Padres starting pitcher, Nick Pivetta, had a great start to the season. He has a 5.31 ERA over his last 4 starts. Of course, 2 of those are at Coors Field and against the Yankees. And of course, this is the Ronald Acuna Jr. return. He's priced so high in DFS at 5,500. I'm not going to go ahead. I'm not going to play that. If you're looking for a batter versus pitcher, Marcell Ozuna, 6 homers and 31 at bats against Pivetta. Unfortunately, that homer price is not that great at plus 265. Instead, I'm going to fade the Padres offense again. I'm going to go under half a run in the first 3 innings. I think they get shut out in the first 3 innings by Sale. We'll play that angle instead.
All right, let's move on to the Dodgers and the Mets. Fun matchup here in the National League. Dodgers slight favorites on the money line, minus 115, total 8.5. Clayton Kershaw making his second start of the season, going up against Griffin Canning. And Jeff, I got to be honest, did not realize how well Griffin Canning has pitched so far this season. 5-1, 2.47 ERA, strikeout rate up almost 2 strikeouts per 9 innings compared to last season. There was some concern in terms of the walk rate, but now it's starting to kind of standardize and looks even better than it did last season. So it turned into a really nice acquisition for this Mets team.
Yeah, absolutely. Canning cut down on the walks, which we were concerned about, raised the strikeouts, and massively increased his ground ball rate. It was 40.7 last year, up to 55.2 this year. Kind of makes you wonder, what were the Angels doing in their pitcher development? You can ask that about a number of their different pitchers there as well. So, meanwhile, I do think this is a tough spot for him, though, against the Dodgers. And I think the Dodgers are going to struggle to prevent run scoring, too. So many of their relievers on the bolt are hurt right now. Clayton Kershaw making a second start, only went 5 innings, was pretty sloppy in that start. I think they're going to dig into that bullpen, and that's where you want to attack with the Dodgers. Mets are a better hitting team at home than they are on the road. 333 WOBA at home, 318 on the road. So let's go over the 8.5 on this one here at minus 122.
Chicago Cubs on the road at your Cincinnati Reds, Jeff. This one close on the money line, minus 115, shaded toward the Cubs, minus 105 if you like Cincinnati. Got Matthew Boyd, a lefty, on the hill for Chicago. And we'll see the return of Hunter Green from the IL. This will be his first start since May 7th.
Yep, and focus on the lefty. The Reds really struggled against lefties lately. Bailey Falter, of all people, and Andrew Heaney shut them down earlier this week. It is back in Great American Ballpark. Matthew Boyd's a good pitcher, though. The Reds struggle against lefties. The one thing they do right is they walk against lefties, but Boyd doesn't give up walks, 6.1% walk percentage. Boyd's gone exactly 6 innings in 4 of his last 5 starts. I think he does it again. Over 17.5 outs recorded at minus 105 is my play.
All right, let's hit one more game real quick, Jeff. The Brewers and the Pirates, Freddie Peralta versus Paul Skeens tonight. The streak is over, by the way. 26 games in a row scoring 4 runs or fewer for the Pirates. They lost last night, but they did score 5 runs for the first time since April 22nd. Came 1 game away from breaking the MLB record for consecutive games with 4 or fewer runs. I know you're looking at the total here in this Brewers-Pirates game, Jeff.
Yeah, fantastic pitching matchup. Two struggling offenses. Wanted to go under 2.5 runs over the first three. Suggestion by my softball buddy, Greg. But the line is pretty punitive at minus 210. So I'll just take the under 6.5 total at plus 100.
All right, we got some G-Bank best bets in the NBA coming your way to finish out the show. They're brought to you, as always, by G-Bank. Introducing the $500 trifecta from G-Bank, First Bet, and VSiN. All you need to do is open a G-Bank Visa Signature credit card. In the first 90 days, deposit and play through $1,000 at First Bet to trigger that $500 trifecta. If you do that, you'll receive $200 in cashback rewards on your G-Bank Visa Signature credit card. First Bet will give you a $100 deposit match. And VSiN completes the trifecta with a free VSiN Pro subscription through August 31st. That's a $200 value. The $500 trifecta from G-Bank, First Bet, and VSiN. Head to VSiN.com/Gbank. That's VSIN.com/Gbank. This one-time promotion is limited to customers opening a new account in response to this offer and will not apply to requests to convert existing accounts. Apply today over at VSiN.com/Gbank. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Jeff. Pacers, Knicks, game 2. You're looking at the under tonight. Explain yourself.
I like a game 2 under, and generally speaking, I think that the shooting was ridiculous and the defense was preposterously bad in game 1. I don't think either apply. I'll go under 224.5 at minus 108.
All right, we're going back to the bank. Andrew Nembhard over 11.5 points tonight, minus 105. Also like Nembhard over 1.5 threes, and McCall Bridges over 1.5 steals. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. Make it rain coming up next.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.